Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week beginning the 29th of September. I'm going to share first of all some of the big themes of the week, then on screen the event chart as the week begins, which always provides an influential backdrop for the whole 7 days. I'll then go through each of the key influences in detail, giving you a clear picture of what we can collectively expect. Please stay with me. I'll then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please help it to continue to thrive and do so now. But also please do click or tap the bell notification symbol. This week begins with a quarter moon in the sign of Capricorn, where the moon is detrimented, its weakest position for its entire journey. What's the significance of that? I will unpack it for you because it provides a backdrop for the whole 7 days. Quarter moons happen twice a month. They don't get anywhere enough focus. They're just as influential in their own way as a full or new moon. And also, as we go into this week, we have the Sun and Mercury continuing their journey in the sign of relating Libra. But Mars is going to be forging a very constructive link to the Sun, a 30-degree semi-sextile, but Mercury is challenged this week, initially by Jupiter and then later in the week by Saturn. That could be very significant if a past relationship or upset is in some ways getting in the way of what you're wanting to achieve now. But as this week draws to a close, I've got some really great news to tell you about, so please stay with me for that. On the screen now is the event chart. As ever, we need to look at the two luminaries first of all, the moon and the sun. So there's the sun at 6 degrees and 4 minutes in that semi-sextile with Mars. Why I feel this is important is that though the sun will be challenged on Monday by the quarter moon, which I will share with you shortly, as we come into this week, what the Sun and Mars are saying to us, if there is a connection we have with someone that's powerful, the strength, the vitality, the thrust and the desire of Mars being in its home sign of Scorpio pushes the Sun to be more decisive, take action. So if there is someone that's coming up on our radar that we're drawn towards, particularly romantically, that's a very powerful and helpful link. But you can see the moon is late in the sign of Sagittarius, hasn't quite moved into Capricorn. This is midnight on Monday morning, and if you did encounter some quite intense stuff last week, which wouldn't be a surprise because of the square between Mars and Pluto, I think it's possible that over the weekend you may have had a desire to spin out, do something freer, more spontaneous, and that comes from the moon in Sagittarius. But as Sunday comes to a close and Monday begins, we could have a thought or we could read something that's very inspirational, particularly about our sense of self-worth and identity. And that's because of the moon's link to Chiron right at the start of this week, a trine. So be open-minded this week. I think that's what the moon is asking you to do before it moves later on Monday into the more conservative Capricorn. So that quarter moon that starts this week, they happen twice a month. The moon, as I mentioned, in Capricorn in its detriment. Capricorn moon is very much about physical security and can be more reserved, perhaps even all the way to being somewhat inhibited. But the square to Libra suggests that particularly at work, if we're the type of person who's very attuned to leaning into colleagues and trying to be collaborative, we may encounter someone this week who's very stuck in their ways and quite resistant to however diplomatic we are, which could prove to be frustrating. So I think all sorts of relationships between different ages may be more of a challenge this week, whether it's someone younger or older, because the moon in Capricorn is very much about the orthodox. The sun in Libra is about perhaps the discussion. It's trying to find that midpoint between what we want and what other people need, and working collaboratively. But as I mentioned, beyond the energies of that quarter moon, we do have that very lusty angle between the Sun and Mars. And I think it is positive because, especially having Mercury in Libra as well, maybe we can think about things almost too much. Mars brings a sense of urgency to the equation, so that's really sweet, I feel. Now, as this week goes on, we are going to see Mars inching towards a lovely angle with Venus. And obviously these two very much about relating. Venus, however, in the sign of Virgo is a bit cooler. It's more about practical gestures rather than deeply romantic ones. But if we look at the position of Mercury, it is going to be in a right angle with Jupiter, which will peak on Wednesday. And if we are trying to relate to someone and they are being a bit stodgy or even very emotional, which is possible with Jupiter, the best we can do really is just to try to keep an even keel. Because later in the week, Mercury does, from Friday through to Sunday, start to reach into a challenging quincunx with Saturn. And however people respond to us this week, or however we respond to relationship possibilities, we mustn't underestimate the psychological influence of Saturn in Pisces. So we may find that our old history can in some ways slow us down a little bit, make us a bit more perhaps even fearful about taking a step forwards. So of course we do have contrasting energies this week. The conservatism of the moon in Capricorn, the thrust of Mars on the Sun, the potentially bubbly right angle between Jupiter and Mercury, which can see people perhaps having disagreements about philosophies and points of view. But we do have Mars advancing forwards to connect in a lovely way with Venus. And Venus also comes into the equation beautifully as the week draws to a close in a lovely angle with Jupiter. So these are the two planets of fortune. And at some level, there could be some serendipity that comes our way as the week draws to a close. Now, maybe it could be, finding an item in the back of our wardrobe that we'd forgotten we owned and thinking, wow, this looks really nice. Could be some money that comes to us unexpectedly. Maybe something within our home that we no longer need. We can sell and get some kind of surplus from it. But also we can just get together with people and perhaps share a really nice lunch or dinner, and that connection that can come from these two hearty influences is really lovely as this week draws to a close. Now I'm going to go through the 12 zodiac signs shortly, but I need to tell you about my unique offer for year 2026. Your forecast for the year, your transits, rest of this year free, your life roadmap report, your character analysis, very, very important. But also in my special package, there's 30% off, but you'll get your free general, love, Vedic and Chinese written zodiac forecast booklets. They're all free. The overall package is 30% off. You get the forecast, but also you get to understand what's been at the heart of your journey in this life so far. Please see the link below for more. So Aries, your week beginning the 29th of September suggests relationship matters are very much to the fore, but relationships don't have to just be of the intimate kind. It could be with the boss, it could be with the kids, it could be with your parents, it could even be with your pets. But one of the things that characterizes your sign is action, and your ruler Mars is in a very intense part of your scope as you go into this week, an area that really gives you much more need to make things happen. Now you do have perhaps a little bit more of an impulsive side. The Sun and Mercury in your opposite sign are asking you to be perhaps a little more detached, slow things down, weigh things up. But is there going to be something that you really find quite compelling, or is it someone that you find quite compelling? So if you do feel attracted or drawn to a situation, whether it's a business partnership, a new idea, or it is someone in a romantic context, that energy between Mars and the Sun is very evocative and can give you a lot of desire. But right at the top of your chart, with the moon in the most visible part of your scope, there's another more contrasting energy, which could be one of maybe being or wanting to be a bit more cautious, or being much more aware of how other people may perceive what you're trying to do. So you've got to kind of juggle the two. I think certainly when it comes to relationships professionally, if you do work in an environment such as a big corporation, and it is perhaps quite set, and you don't feel there's much feedback, there's not much give and take, it's not very inclusive, that could be something that makes you think very much about, do you want to be in this organisation? And with Uranus still, despite its retrograde, in a dazzling part of your scope for your ideas, and Pluto in the part of your situation to do with your long-term future, stepping outside what you know, being more daring in your approach, particularly as the ideas for that, what I feel were percolating quite strongly last week. Don't switch that off. That's still part of the equation. But I think what's important to you at the moment is connection, and that's intriguing because, of course, you are someone who can take decisions in a very singular way and have the confidence and courage to do that. But at the moment, I feel those connections are really calling out to you, but the connections that are really valuable. And if you're in a situation where you just feel inhibited, someone's not really wanting to engage with you, that could make you think very carefully about what your future plan is within that situation. As the week draws to a close, with Jupiter in a very strong alliance to Venus, Venus is in the part of your chart that could be to do with jobs. Jupiter's in the part of your situation, again, about how does it feel. But there may be a conversation that you have perhaps with a family member that could give you a different perspective on any kind of scenario that you're finding yourself as the week draws to a close. So Taurus, your week beginning the 29th of September continues to have the Sun and Mercury asking you to grapple with life's everyday details, structures, routines, obligations. But because of the quarter moon in, for you, the free-spirited 9th house, that's giving you an urge to do what you want for you, be a bit more independent, and that can create a conflict. You could even feel a bit bored with a current job or how your usual weekly structure goes, may find yourself a bit restless. And then the square between Jupiter in your 3rd house, which could be giving you a burst of enthusiasm for new knowledge, and Mercury suggests again that those routines can seem just a little bit dull, maybe the ones that ordinarily you're completely accepting of. So this may be a week which just in some ways teases up a need for you to do what you want against what you really know you should be doing. So a little bit of a conflict. Now Mars being in your 7th house suggests if you are collaborating, particularly at work, with people who do get what you have to offer, and it is interesting, it is stimulating, that can actually be very exciting. Now by the end of this week, the angle between Venus, your ruler, and Jupiter is really absolutely delightful. You could have a conversation, all that workaday stuff of earlier in the week just fades away somewhat. You could have a conversation with someone new. It could be in a social situation. It may be through technology. And there could be a real lovely simpatico between you and just very easy to get along. But I think it's those more everyday kind of relationships that could test your desire this week to just be a little bit more of your own person. And if you are someone who's very dutiful, that in itself creates some kind of inner dilemma. So Gemini, your week beginning the 29th of September sees your ruler Mercury very much in the mix this week. Mercury can be mischievous in the 5th house, but in a lovely way. Has a great sense of humour, can be playful, perhaps a little bit surprising. And also the Sun in your 5th house is pushing you to showcase your unique talents. to have the confidence to let people know just how much charisma and flair you possess. But they're both coming into challenging angles. The Sun initially with that quarter moon, but the Sun is supported by Mars in a more constructive way, and then Mercury initially comes into a right angle with Jupiter in the part of your scope to do with everyday money. So I would suggest, because Jupiter can be quite indulgent, probably best to hold off from being tempted around anything too speculative. You may be drawn towards a big ticket item and may find it somewhat irresistible. But the square with the Sun right at the start of the week with the Moon, that can throw up a situation where you may feel that someone's being a bit clingy, perhaps a bit possessive. If you're in a love relationship, that could be something you find a little challenging. And because of Mercury being in the square with Jupiter, maybe a conversation needs to be had. But in a more constructive way, if you are collaborating with people and it is around an interest or hobby, and you can work well and also work hard, the energy of Mars can give your stamina quite the boost early in the week, and that's something that's going to be very helpful. Towards the end of the week, however, there may be an opportunity to have some fortune linked to a property matter. Maybe a family member is going to be very generous. If you do get together with your folks or your extended family, it could be a very jolly occasion as this week comes to a close. The only thing I would say is that with Mercury in a quincunx through the last 2 days of this week, which is not exact, that's going to be next week, but it starts to emerge. When it comes to your professional situation, if you are much more of a bohemian, much more of a creative, but you're having in some ways to fit into a bigger structure, maybe a corporation, there are set expectations, that could feel a bit limiting too. So the quarter moon this week, I think, makes you much more aware of where your spirit, where you can really show your unique talent and really shine up. If there is anything that is inhibiting that, whether it's someone's jealousy, whether it's the expectations of that big business, that could at times this week just be something that takes the edge off. But there is the potential for that lovely connection as the week draws to a close, or a stroke of good fortune. So Cancer, your week beginning the 29th of September sees the Sun and Mercury continuing what for you is the fourth house, which is not directly like Cancer, but it has a kind of echo. Certainly very much about your environment. The energy of Libra is about balance. So what you're looking for, I feel here, is good connections within your family, smooth communications, but also a sense in terms of your physical environment that feels comfortable too. Because of the quarter moon right at the top of the week, that's in your seventh house. If you feel around close relationships, because you can be very intuitive, even atmospherically, you don't always have to have a conversation. If someone's not feeling very connected to you, but perhaps in some ways has a lot of expectations around your support and encouragement, that could be something that you find a little challenging. But if you are finding a connection with someone in a more creative way, and it could be someone who enjoys crafting, an artistry project, the energy of Mars and the Sun in the early part of this week is really good. So if you do have that simpatico with someone, that can feel sweet. Also, Jupiter in your sign forges a very strong right angle with Mercury right at the heart of the week. This is one of those squares that can have an upside. You know, Jupiter in your sign is encouraging you to feel the confidence around what makes you individual and different. Mercury in that fourth house perhaps could be part of your thinking, which may challenge that confidence in some ways. But between the two of them, there could be a bit of a tussle. Maybe someone close to you is actually going to be quite motivational and remind you of the special qualities that you have. As the week draws to a close, however, Mercury does come into a tense angle, an emerging angle with Saturn. Back in your ninth house, right through to the middle of February, If there are issues to do with higher education, contractual matters, maybe to do with publishing, if you're involved in the digital world, you travel for your work, if that in any way takes you away from home or doesn't feel very comfortable in terms of your inner world, that could start to show itself towards the end of this week. But despite that, there could be, if you get together with the right people as this week draws to a close, the people you feel very comfortable with, maybe you're going to even invite people around to your home. A lovely, bubbly, effervescent link between Jupiter and Venus. So just as we draw to the end of this week, if you can put some of those life concerns to one side, there is a chance to inject some real joyfulness as this week draws to a close. So Leo, your week beginning the 29th of September is a very lively start to the week. Your mind can be bursting with ideas, lots of different possibilities, a real sense of excitement. But the quarter moon with the practical moon in the sign of Capricorn suggests you're going to need to output some of these ideas into something more tangible to give you a sense of achievement. Otherwise you could end the week feeling that you were a bit scattered and didn't get much done. So do set yourself a to-do list. But also there's a lot of nervous energy going around the more psychological part of your chart. You could find that something comes up, someone could share something with you. It could actually be really illuminating. If you are wanting to direct those energies towards making some physical changes to where you live, I feel that can really inspire you. That's the Sun's semi-sextile to Mars. But towards the end of this week, there's going to be a very sweet link between Jupiter and also Venus, the two planets of fortune. Something you've done for someone in the past can come back to you in an extremely positive way, and it could even be financially. It's also possible that hard work you've been investing over a long period of time around your career can suddenly be rewarded. How this comes about may be somewhat unexpected, but the other thing that could happen towards the end of this week, one of your most lovely traits is that you can be very generous, and particularly to those people who are less fortunate, and you may find yourself helping someone as this week draws to a close. So it's a week that is absolutely packed full of possibilities. It's just organising your thoughts, your nervous energy towards things that give you some kind of practical outcome, that you can make some progress forwards in a tangible way. But there is some serendipity to come as this week draws to a close. So Virgo, your week beginning the 29th of September continues to see with the Sun and your ruler Mercury in the part of your chart to do with life foundations. You grapple with things like your ingoings and outgoings, but also where you can perhaps work on your sense of self-worth and value. But the quarter moon on Monday brings a perhaps more speculative vibe into the mix. If there is something you've had your eye on that has proved to be rather tempting for a while, you may find that much more difficult to resist this week. That could even be someone that you're drawn to romantically. But there may be someone around you that you're close to that has had a tendency to perhaps take your support, even financial support, a little bit for granted. And this could be the week on the back of that quarter moon when you remind them that their financial affairs is their personal responsibility. But also Jupiter, the planet of optimism, hope and good fortune, is going to be forging a very interesting link with Mercury at the heart of this week. A friend actually could really be very encouraging if they've got an idea that they feel they can work with you on, and it could be in some ways to turn an interest or hobby into something that does provide a pep up to your finances. And indeed by the end of this week, Jupiter forges a delicious link to Venus in your sign. This could go all the way to really showcasing your creativity and artistry in a very constructive way, and that could be very exciting. But maybe there is that person who's really becoming much more important in your world. It doesn't have to be a romantic partner. It may be just someone who just seems to cheer you up, or you lift them. So some kind of social opportunity at the end of the week is very possible. And if you can enjoy good food and getting together with people who are elevating for your spirits, I think it can be a very merry time indeed. So Libra, your week beginning the 29th of September is a part of the year when, if you really focus, because of the Sun and Mercury being in your sign, on strands or projects that are really important to you, the energy of Mars applying to the Sun can give you an opportunity to push forwards with determination and actually start to get some tangible progress, perhaps even financially. It's just you could be deflected by the quarter moon on Monday. That's in a very tender part of your scope. Someone close to you may need your support. There may be some personal issues that you need to attend to, and that could require you to have to juggle your time just when you really want to concentrate and seize the moment. But also with Jupiter, the planet of opportunity and good fortune, right high in the sky in your sector of career and ambition, forging a very bright right angle to Mercury in your sign midweek, your enthusiasm could be infectious, and that can have an impact on someone you come into contact with in a professional situation. But by the end of the week, Jupiter's forging a link with your ruler Venus. Now that's in a much more secluded part of your situation. There could be another part of your thinking, particularly to do with your work, that can get you in some ways connected to a past skill, project, or even person. And there could be something in that energy. So if you do find yourself just coming across someone perhaps on social media, or a person comes up in your mind that you used to have a connection with, maybe some polite or some discreet soundings can be to your advantage. But I think if you are wanting to really be totally focused on what's important to you, you can do it, and that could see you take a giant step forwards. But just be aware that there may be people around you who do need you to be mindful of their more sensitive needs just at this key time for you. Scorpio, your week beginning the 29th of September sees the Sun and Mercury still sheltered in a very private part of your situation, which can be very reflective but also very sensitive. Now they're activated by two energies that are much more to do with communication. The fast communication of the moon on Monday, the quarter moon, but also the more expansive energy of Jupiter in the part of your chart to do with philosophies and ideas. A conversation you have this week could be very evocative, but something could also be teased into the open that feels a little bit testing. If you are spending time with people that you're not so sure of, you work with people where the atmosphere isn't quite as good as it could be, just be aware that if you reveal something of a confidential or private nature, someone could seize on it like a tasty morsel and recycle it, but not exactly as you've expressed. So be very careful about who you open up to, but also just know that if your mind's very busy, take it back down into your deeper world. You are someone with the ability to penetrate into situations in such a powerful and thoughtful manner, and that's the energy you should embrace this week. But despite these sensitivities, by the end of the week, an absolutely delicious link between Jupiter and Venus, the two planets of fortune, suggests there can be one friend of yours, even if you have encountered someone earlier in the week who's a bit disappointing, a bit insensitive, doesn't quite get where you are. There can be someone else who really is great fun, and it can be such a counterpoint and give you a real lift as the week comes to a close. Sagittarius, your week beginning the 29th of September, continues to see the Sun and the communicator Mercury in the part of your chart to do with your connections, your network, your long-term plan, your friendships, but also the things that you feel quite idealistic about. But there is a stab of realism that comes from the quarter moon on Monday, which provides a backdrop for the whole week. You could become more conscious that someone that you like, perhaps in your social situation, isn't quite as in tune with some of your values as much as you would like. Also, if you are working towards something that is important to you and finance is proven to be a bit of an inhibition, that could check you somewhat. But I want you to know that your ruler Jupiter is super influential this week and potentially in a very, very helpful way. Jupiter's in the part of your chart to do with longer term investment and finance, but also those that are shared. In the middle of the week, it's in a square with Mercury, also like the Sun in Libra. And actually, this is one of those harder aspects in astrology which can work to our advantage. Your ability to speculate could come to you in a very positive way because you're able to link to others. And that connection, that collaboration may bring something towards the end of this week which gives you a really serious option, because Jupiter then links fabulously well to Venus, and Venus is already in a very visible part of your chart. It's the planet of fortune. It's known as the lesser benefit, but it's still very helpful. But there, it's about how we cultivate or connect to people, and diplomacy is important. Sometimes you can be very enthusiastic and find it a little bit more frustrating to play the game, which is totally understandable and also very admirable. But there may be someone you do need to connect to where they have different needs to yours, but it doesn't mean to say you can't align. But I think if someone's really spinning out from your situation, taking you for granted or whatever, that may be a friendship that you do want to steer clear of going forwards. So a week when you can really feel a sense of excitement for your long-term hopes, but it is important to toggle the immediate energies around finances and your contacts. So Capricorn, your week beginning the 29th of September continues to provide a platform for you to springboard your hopes when it comes to your goals and ambitions. If you want to aim high, this is a week that's going to assist you, not least because Mars, the planet of passion, assertion and drive, is in a part of your situation to do with your contacts. A case of who, as much as what you know, may be part of the equation, but also if you have a really clear idea of what your long-term plan is, that's going to help to boost you too. It's just that on Monday, the quarter moon in your sign will require some care. The moon in Capricorn is in detriment. It's a position of the moon where we can feel a bit more guarded or diffident. And maybe there could be just a moment in the week when you do doubt whether you can really go for a golden prize. You may even feel that you're encountering some imposter syndrome, but do keep the faith, because Jupiter, the planet of positivity, is going to help you to link to people better than you may imagine. The way you convey your message will be particularly animated at the heart and the end of the week. So if you are someone who wants to take on more responsibility, apply for a new job, work on your own enterprise in a very entrepreneurial way with greater confidence, this is a week when you can continue to make progress. But don't let that little voice inside your head doubt what you're capable of. It is a time when you can demonstrate to people just how efficient, hardworking, and industrious you can be, but also that you can have the personality power to link well with other people too. So Aquarius, your week beginning the 29th of September can see you in an expansive frame of mind, excited by life's possibilities. Anything to do with travel, higher education, bringing a greater sense of variety and spontaneity into your world can all really prove very enticing. It's just that amplification that's coming in a very positive way could also amplify some sensitivities, because on Monday there is a quarter moon with the moon in Capricorn, the most tender part of its entire journey through the heavens for you, but also for us all collectively, because the moon in Capricorn is detrimented. There may be something psychological that comes up this week. Maybe someone's rather insensitive, doesn't quite tune into how you feel, but whatever energy you soak up from this can just seem to be turned up to max, and it could be a little bit more difficult to fend that off. But the potential for you to even see the light when there is a little bit of darkness is still going to be very strong, because that part of you that is a free spirit, that understands independence, that appreciates it's what we do, it's the choices we make, it's the knowledge that we gain, that can help you to steer your way through this week in a very constructive way. And as the week draws to a close, financially, something really solid and uplifting can occur, which gives you a big boost. And don't forget, not only is the Sun and Mercury in a very expansive part of your situation, Mars is in a very authoritative one. And if you do want to seize the moment, raise your profile, let people know about your range of talents, especially if you work in publishing, if you're involved in technology in any way, teaching or training, that confidence can be something that other people find very exciting to be around. So if there are some tender moments, moments of doubt, try not to put too much energy towards it, because if you just absolutely concentrate and program your thinking in a very dynamic way, this is a week that can end in a very, very exciting way. So Pisces, your week beginning the 29th of September, continues to see the Sun and Mercury, the planet of thought, but also of communication, making their way through the deep 8th house. In a practical way, the 8th house is brilliant if we want to think very carefully about our resources and how we can squeeze a bit more out of them by being even cannier. So if you do find yourself thinking about the cost of things, but things that have some kind of impact on your long-term circumstances, so it may be doing some research on pensions, shares, savings, where you may tease a bit more value. But also the 8th house can be about powerful transformations. It's also where we can be most invested in an emotional, spiritual, or even intimate way. And a tie that's going well could get even deeper, but a tie that feels a bit cloying and maybe inhibiting, the energy of Mars in your 9th house could give you the desire to have a bit of space. Also, for you, the 11th house energy of the quarter moon on Monday suggests if someone is being rather possessive or you even feel controlling, that's something you may want to push back upon. But the good news is if you are single and there is someone coming up on your orbit that is proven to be rather evocative, the link between Jupiter, the planet of luck, in the most flirty, romantic and playful part of your scope, but Venus, the planet of relating, as the week draws to a close, suggests that 8th house energy makes you much more conscious of what you really want. And what you really want is something that's much more significant. So don't feel you're going to give up your personal space and freedom easily this week. You may even want to reclaim it. But if there is someone you're finding to be very mesmeric, evocative and hard to resist, by the end of the week, there may be part of you that actually wants to connect to them in a very powerful and exciting way. I need to tell you about my unique offer for year 2026. Your forecast for the year, your transits, rest of this year free, your life roadmap report, your character analysis, very, very important. But also in my special package, there's 30% off, but you'll get your free general, love, Vedic and Chinese written Zodiac forecast booklets. They're all free. The overall package is 30% off. You get the forecast, but also you get to understand what's been at the heart of your journey in this life so far. Please see the link below for more.